So here we're going to go into the saddest cities to be a sports fan in. If you're a fan of all things sports and you live in these cities, I am so sorry. You are the most resilient person that there is, or a masochist, because you just keep coming back for more. You're definitely loyal. Um, so we're not really going in any particular order here, but these are just like how. I mean, I'm a Philadelphian, so we had a lot of heartbreak for my entire life until the Phillies won the World Series, and then the last 10 years the Eagles have won it twice, so kind of off the hook. Before then it was tough. I mean, it still is, but you know, like, all right, first and foremost, Cleveland. As a Philadelphia fan, I've always loved Cleveland teams, but man, I was so happy they were there because it was like, well, at least there's someone who's won less than us. And it's been longer for them. So I'm sorry, Cleveland. I love the Browns. I mean, it's such a cool team. Such cool uniforms. They play outdoors on grass, cold weather. They're a classic team. It's amazing they've never been to a Super Bowl. Never even been there. I mean, they dominated in the 50s, won all sorts of NFL championships. Haven't even been to the Super Bowl. They've won, or they've been to 4 championship games, lost them all, sometimes in heartbreaking fashion. Man, the Indians, I loved them when they were the Indians. I don't care for them now. I loved them. 2 heartbreaking Game 7 losses. One of them, they were up in the 9th inning. They lost. Ugh. And then there's the Cavaliers, who at least they won. They won that one. Now they got a little help with that suspension, but they won it. And that suspension wasn't really. If that series was, if the Warriors had won that game, they went up, or if the Cavaliers had won that game, I don't think Draymond gets suspended. I think that suspension was like, hey, this is a perfect way to get Cleveland back in the series. But they won it, and I was happy to see that. And I was happy to see Game 6 and 7. So Cleveland, I'm so sorry. I'm pulling for you. Next up would be Phoenix. Now, Phoenix really kind of, I've never heard anyone mention how sad of a a run all of their teams have had. I mean, they used to have 4 teams. Even with 3 now, like the Suns been to the finals twice, lost them both. They haven't been 3 times. Lost them all. And then I mean they had they had really good and exciting teams. I mean, with Charles Barkley for 4 years, they were contenders, and they lost some heartbreaking. They lost heartbreaking Game 7. And, I mean, I guess anytime you lose in the playoffs, it's heartbreaking, but but they lost. And then the Steve Nash era Suns were so great and never even made it to the finals. I mean, and then when in 07 when they had a really good chance and they get all those like suspensions stuff, like man, nothing goes their way ever. But Cardinals, now I know they haven't been in Arizona for all that long, in the grand scheme of things. But man, from 1948 till 19 or till 2007, they had one playoff win. So that's pretty bad. And then when they make a run to the Super Bowl, they get as close as you can get to winning it, pretty much, and then lose. Like, oh man. Now the Diamondbacks, they've at least won one. They were very close to not winning that one, and that's it. That's the only championship that they've ever won. Phoenix. It's been, I mean, they've had three teams for at least. They've had at least three teams for at least 45 years and one championship. And that was 25 years ago. So, oh, man, Phoenix. At least you got perfect weather out there, right? So it can't be too miserable. At least that's what everyone says. Never been there. Houston. Now, Houston, because the Astros won it 3-4 years ago now, like 3.5 years ago. That gives them a little leeway, but I mean, they had a lot of teams. I mean, they have three teams, and they had, I mean, the Oilers. The Oilers had such great teams, and they never made it to a Super Bowl. I mean, they ran into the steel curtain in the late 70s and a referee, and so they lose those. They had such good teams in the early 90s, and I mean, they were up. They had a 35-3 lead in a playoff game, lost that. They won in 93. They won like 11 straight games, lost their first playoff game. And then the Texans have never been to a conference championship. And they've been around for 20 some years now. So with free agency, like, you should, I know they were in a division with our conference with Brady, Roethlisberger, and Manning, and Ravens, and now the Chiefs. But gosh, to never just make one run to get to the conference championship, that's got to be tough. Now the Rockets, they're not really, they're nothing right. I mean, they won back-to-back championships in the 90s. I don't consider them having an asterisk, but they always have to defend their title. Anytime anybody talks about the Rockets winning 2 championships in the 90s, everyone always says, well, yeah, that's because Michael Jordan didn't play those years. And he did play in half of one of those years. But, like, so they gotta always defend that and be like, no, we still would have won and stuff, which we'll never know. And I don't really like when people say Jordan would have won 8 straight. Like, he's not a machine. They might have got beat. You never know. And not only that, maybe that's why he came back and was so great, was because he didn't play for a year and a half. So, you never know. But Houston is it'd be tough to be a fan. And now the Astros, 2017 definitely has an asterisk on it. So there's that. But it's a Phillies fan. They win it in 2022. That sucked. But they at least have that championship for their sake. Atlanta's probably had the most heartbreak. Now, I know the Braves won it 5 years ago, so good for them. But even with that, for the last 50, 60 years, I mean, the Hawks have never, they finally made it to the conference finals for the first time like 5 years ago. They've never been to the NBA finals. This is a team that's been around forever. They've been in Atlanta since the 60s. They've never even been to the finals. They had Dominique Wilkins. They had some pretty good teams with Joe Johnson and Josh Smith and Al Horford, and They ran into Michael Jordan and LeBron James, and really Larry Bird and Michael Jordan and LeBron James. It's like they could never just get lucky and draw like some okay team. That's kind of the way basketball works. But so the Hawks never nothing. Unfortunately, they're just they're like always okay. They're like always the 7th seed in the playoffs. The best they'll ever do is, I guess they had the number 1 seed like 10 years ago, and they lose to LeBron. And then, I mean, the Braves. But now they did win it recently, so, but that doesn't mean that, I mean, one championship in however many years doesn't take you off my list. Because the Braves, oh my God, 14 straight years in the playoffs, and they win 1 World Series, and it came during a strike shortened year. Yes, it still counts, but I would hate that. If that was my team. Now 91. I mean, they lost a game 7, a 1-0 game 7 that went into extra innings. Like, how depressing is that? That's so that kicked off their heartbreaking playoff streak. 96. They take the first 2 games of the World Series in Yankee Stadium. They're going back home for game 3. Lose game 3. Game 4, they have a 6-0 lead late into the game. And then in the 8th inning, and the Yankees they were on their way to being the powerhouse Yankees, but they weren't there yet. They hadn't won a World Series with that group. And you think of all the great players and Yankees lore and on those 90s teams. I mean, you got Jeter, Paul O'Neill, Bernie Williams, like Wade Boggs, Darryl Strawberry. All those guys have played throughout that run they had. And the biggest home run that was hit, like Jorge Posada, Tino Martinez, all these guys. Jim Leyritz hits, they're down 3, 8th inning. Jim Leyritz, it's a home run to tie it up. Are you kidding me? The backup catcher. Ugh. And then in that series, game 5, they lose 1-0. Man, John Smoltz, big game pitcher. He is on the wrong side of all these 1-0 losses, and it's not his fault. He brought his game in the biggest games. Unfortunately, the other pitcher brought his too. I mean, the other pitcher in that game was Andy Pettitte. That was kind of the birth of his being a big game pitcher. And then there's the Falcons. Wow. Like, they were just kind of whatever for a long time. And then, I mean, they made it to the Super Bowl once. And then, between them and Minnesota, it was like, somebody's got to win. Although I guess Atlanta didn't have the bad luck streak that they have now. I mean, Matt Ryan. And like, I liked Matt Ryan, especially because he's Western PA always had the great quarterbacks, like the best quarterbacks. And then Eastern PA, we had Gary Collins. And then it's like, oh, now we got Matt Ryan. And oh my God, his we're going to go in depth on Matt Ryan and why I feel so horrible for him. Despite no matter how much money he makes, like his career is just, it's so sad. Anyway, so in 2012 they have 2010 they go like 13-3, lose in the first round to the Packers, get just dismantled. Which that Packers team was on a roll. They win the Super Bowl. Okay, 2011 they played the Giants, who were 9-7. They lose 24-2. How weird is that? 24-2 in football. I think I'd rather get beat 24-0 than 2. Like, that just looks so awkward. The next year, they make to the conference championship game. They have a 17-0 lead. Blow it. Biggest blown lead in an NFC championship game ever. And then they had chances to win at the end. And I mean, they had a chance to go down and on 4th down, and they don't convert. Season's over. That's it. And then they don't even make the playoffs the next like 3 years. And then 28-3. We all know about 28-3. We don't have to get into that. I, as like Joe Montana, is my favorite player ever. That crushed me, and just watching that whole thing fall apart was like, you've got to be kidding me. Really, he's gonna win his 5th championship this way? And then they never recovered from that. I mean, they made the playoffs the next year and thankfully lost. That was it. It's the end of that era. I mean, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, these great players that they're forever going to be on a list of greatest players to never win a championship, and they were so close. So and any Atlanta fans out there, like, the fact that you keep coming back, cheers. I would put Detroit in there. Because Detroit, like, they haven't won a championship in 20 years now. So, and I mean, in 35 years, they've won one. And I mean, Detroit basketball, they did go back-to-back, late 80s, early 90s. Tigers won it in 68 and 84, so it's not as bad. But still, it's been 20 years, and I mean, the Lions, and then the Tigers, they made it to the ALCS 3 years in a row. They had Scherzer, Verlander, they had David Price for a year, Miguel Cabrera, Prince Fielder when he was still healthy. They couldn't get it done, and they lost to, I mean, they got swept by the Giants, who were like, I mean, the Giants, they could win in the playoffs. And then the Lions. I mean, my God. The Lions going from 1959 up until, what, like 2022. They had won one playoff game. So, man, them and the Cardinals. It's kind of amazing. Like, it's kind of a shame that the Cardinals never played the Lions in the playoffs. Like, somebody would have to win. And it's just amazing that the Lions and Browns dominated football in the 50s. So if you were somebody who was a big football fan in the 50s, and you got like cryogenically frozen, and then you woke up in this year, you'd probably be sitting there being like, man, how many championships do they have by now? Like, they haven't been back since. It's just sports are crazy like that. Um, there you go. Detroit's on my list. They're and like I like some of their teams. This is nothing against any of the cities. It's actually more of a compliment to all the fans that keep showing up, despite the fact that you know you're gonna get your heart broken. And but those fans just never stop believing. And good for you. Uh, Now Philadelphia is certainly in there. Now they've won 2 Super Bowls in the last 10 years, so that kind of eases the pain. But Philly is not really a city of winners. I mean, it's been a lot different for the last few years, but Philly, I think with their most recent Super Bowl win, I think they kind of escaped that list. So there you go. I hope, and hey, keep showing up. That's a that's a lost art these days. Is people sticking with their teams. And I was and I was this video was really about any city that's got like at least 3 teams. You can say like Buffalo, but it's like, well, they have like 2 teams. That like, I don't really count that. You gotta have at least 3. Um, kind of put maybe Tampa Bay in there because no, they've. I don't think I'd put them there. Yeah, I think that's it. Those those are those are some tough places to be if you're a diehard sports fan. And I hope you don't feel like you wasted your time, because that's what makes sports is is always believing. So until next time, maybe I'll have some good news for all you out there.